Bitcoin fractal price action and 65K. Let's dive in to talk about it. Hey, howdy everyone. Tony here. Hope you're doing well. As always, today we're going to go over Bitcoin. We're going to start out at the larger time frame and work our way into the smaller time frames and lesser degrees and check out some correlations vis-a-vis ES and the dollar. This is going to be a quicker one. Father's Day, happy Father's Day. And I went out and touched grass, and the grass is trying to suffocate me now. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. All right, starting out here on the daily, I have my favorite levels here marked off. I think the major ones we have to watch at the moment is obviously 65K. We're looking here, we attempted a break above it. It's rejected and we fell back below it. That doesn't mean we're 100% done yet. But as you can see, it played as support in the past. And anytime a level breaks, especially this far down, we have to consider that it might reject, depending on where we are in the count and where it bounces out of and all that kind of stuff. But we're really watching where it bounces from an area of interest, level of interest, what have you. And then we're watching how it bounces. If we get a nice spike up, then there's possibility that was the end and the market wants to change direction. And we'll be watching for this level to flip to support. So far, that hasn't proven itself. So 65K is the level that the bulls have to beat here and break this pivot up at 67. Right now we have is a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. We can keep that up, then that's the minimum for a uptrend. On the larger picture, last time I think a couple weeks ago we were talking about what I was looking for after we get this dump. And I looked back at these fractals and you can see that we're still imprinting in kind of the same thing as far as the fractals go. Get a swift move down, get a swift bounce up, and then we get a little bit of a retrace before we come up and break the high of that bounce. And that's basically what we've been doing all the way here. Now we've done it at the smaller degree. So I think we still have a lot of clues adding up that this lesser degree bounce is still going to be a bearish pattern or fractal, as it does line up with a lot of these moves here. And as you can see, when we did get this bounce up in the second leg up, we came back, retest the underside of this level before we rejected hard off of that. And that's what we're doing here. We didn't break as deep as we have in the past over here. We only gave a little breach, swept some out. So that could be it again if we can hold this lows. But if we look at this in a fractal point of view, we can see we're kind of putting in the same thing at the higher degree. This is the daily over here, and this is the 1 hour. So just based off the price action, again, in Elliott Wave and any kind of price action methodology, we're looking for what the price action is telling us and which direction the price action wants to go. Typically, when we get a corrective move like this held within parallel lines or a channel, we end up getting a dump from there, which breaks the start of that bounce. So that's what I'm expecting here. I think 65 is going to hold and we're going to roll over and head on down for lower lows. Now, I was saying that was a possibility back here. We ended up popping up and going a bit deeper than I suspected, but this is all based off of news. So pending any news delivery this afternoon, again, typically what's been happening is every weekend I put out a video, and right after I put it out, news drops, and then it sends Bitcoin in an exaggerated direction. So that could play again here. I think Trump announced the end of the war, everything's hunky-dory. And then all of a sudden, after hours on Friday, while the market was closed, the strait is open and they're charging people again. Overall, if we just look at the fractals here, we have a swift move down, a little bit of hesitation before we get a big drop. We get a bounce up, internal retracement, a deep internal retracement that holds the low here, and then we get continuation to the upside. There's a saying out there that says trade it till it fails. And I think right now we have some clues here that the market still wants to move downward. As far as the count goes, I think we can still count this as a larger degree. 1, 2, 3, 4 impulsive move coming down. But again, if we look to the left here, it's left Elliotticians kind of scratching their head. We could put this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over here. So there's a possibility that we've gotten some extension in the fifth and that we're going to bounce up for a deeper bounce. But then at that point, I'd be looking at 73.9. But with all that being said, again, the main level we have to keep an eye on here is 65K. If bulls can break above that and flip it into support, if not blast back up all the way up to 73, I think we have a possibility here that we're going to reject and either do some more sideways kind of action between these two levels over summer, or we're just going to head on down and rip off the Band-Aid and head on lower. Price action on the 1 hour here is not as clean as far as the count goes, unless you want to get creative. And anytime you have to get creative, the count is sussed right off the bat. Not reliable for a trade, might be reliable for some good content, but anytime we get junk PA like this, that doesn't give us a nice clear pattern. We have to be sus, and the trade setup is less reliable, in my opinion. But again, I know creative Elliottians that can pick it out and happen to catch the turn. I don't see a whole lot of clarity in here, so I'm going to move Elliott Wave down the list of tools that I'm using and go off the level here. And I suspect that we will hold this high and continue on lower. That's all I got on BTC. Let's go ahead and look at the correlated assets. All right, checking out the correlated assets here on ES and DXY. Obviously, we can see where we got that big news pump and where it correlated and echoed over into Bitcoin and surprisingly exaggerated over in ETH as well. ETH is so beat up. I bet any move up is welcome, and there's a potential that we could get some exaggerated moves to the upside if things end up trending up that way. Right now, I think all we have is three-way move on ETH and on BTC, all dependent on these pivots and if they're going to break here or if they're going to end up breaking down, nullifying the 1-2-1-2 setup that could be playing out at the moment. Again, since we're looking at the correlated asset, it's all going to depend on how the big boys end up printing. Again, we got a bunch of news last week. One was on Sunday where we got the gap up, and then the second one was when the new Fed spoke, sending the dollar up and dropping the ES down. So as you can tell, we're in a very news correlated market at the moment. So any news drop that the market finds significant, we could get moves in any direction. But I think the main thing we have to look at here is that the DXY has swept the upper level that we were looking for before last week. So getting rid of all that stuff, as you can see, we've been putting in a broadening wedge here and sweeping highs and lows and then reversing back to take out the opposite pivots on the other side. So whether this was the bottom at 95 and we came just to sweep this level and we ended up coming back down, or if this was all the liquidity it needed externally and then we got some internal liquidity here and we're moving up on the DXY, that could determine where we're going to go with ES and, of course, how it's going to ripple down to BTC and crypto. So far, the dollar is looking very bullish, so we'll have to consider that this trend is going to continue, even though it was based off news. So there's a chance that the dollar is going to continue heading up here. And what we're going to have to wait for is how this is going to play out next week and into the rest of the summer. So the big thing that we can notice here, just looking at the price action, is that we're getting swift moves up, corrections or consolidations, and continuation in the movement of the trend. Of course, one of these swift moves up is going to end up being the top, and we're going to end up getting the swift move down and correction internal. And that's what I'm watching for here. It all depends on how we're going to react from this level. Since we did sweep a high, sometimes what that can mean, especially since we just gave it a little breach at the moment, so we're going to come back down in for some more internal liquidity before we move up, or we're done and we're going to head on down. So I think next week's going to be huge for that. Right now, you can see that we're flipping resistance back into support and getting continuation. So that's what we're watching for here. I think 100.197 is a level to keep an eye on. That could be the first gauge as to where we are. If we do end up breaking back beneath 100.522, if we're going to hold bullish, I think 197 is the line where we can start considering if we break that impulsively that things might be over and we'd be watching for an underside retracement and continuation to the downside, which would echo up to ES, which is still looking bullish as far as the price action goes. Again, we're getting swift moves up, corrections internal. We haven't filled this gap yet. And the news that dropped on Friday, I think, still has to be a bit more digested by the market. When futures open, we'll see how that all plays out. So futures open and stocks or US open is going to be the key time components here to keep an eye on. But we're still putting in swift moves up, corrections down. So there's a possibility that we could continue that process. But again, we'll have to see how the futures open here. If we do end up breaking down, we'll be looking at our levels of interest here as usual. One of them being at 7,411. So that's the first indication if we end up breaking down that something crazy is going on and that we could be heading down. breaking beneath our area of interest here, and our level of interest at 7411 is going to be the first line in the sand that we have to watch to see how that all plays out. If we end up dropping lower, as always, ES direction is going to ripple over to Bitcoin. So any kind of sideways here, again, we are putting in a broadening wedge here as well. We just swept the high, so there's a possibility we could be headed back down, sweep the low here, grab some more liquidity, and we keep moving like that until eventually a side is chosen. For that to play out, if we end up dropping down here, the DXY is going to have to send it up. So right now, I think the only saving grace for Bitcoin is if ES heads up and DXY dumps. Otherwise, I think we're going to keep on heading lower and break the pivot down at 60K and head on down to the 50s. As always, I'm just rolling with the waves as they print. If we do get a dump over here, I'll be watching for a sweep of the 60K level. A break above, I'm looking for a motive move, impulsive move, breaking this pivot, and a correction back to this level if we don't get a blast up and away from that. But that's going to be it for me this week. Hope everyone has a good Father's Day and good day off. If you like this type of analysis, hit subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And you can check out some of my other videos, my educational videos, where I go into some more obscure Elliott Wave patterns, like the new diagonal rules, and some of my other analysis videos. Come check me out on all my socials. I post there a lot more, to be honest. If you see something different, leave a comment down below. I read them all. And if you're getting tired of being beat down by crypto, I would recommend coming over to Trade Devils University, learning more about technical analysis, checking out the belt system, using this time to learn all you can about reading the charts and getting some experience in a bear market before the next bull market comes. Also, right now, Trade Devil has just been killing it. He's posting all of his trades just in the free Discord. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. Use my referral link down below. Go sign up through the website and come check out some of his trades. And again, as always, trade safe, trade clarity. Take it easy. Later.